Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on word from Elections Alberta of an alleged misuse of the list of electors. But first, aligned in opposition.
They are tragic questions that are putting our society at risk. And I think that we need to stand together, stand united, opposed to them. And the Liberal Party was a fantastic vehicle that we could work with.
Political strategist Stephen Carter on teaming up with the Alberta Liberal Party on a campaign opposing questions in the October provincial referendum, a partnership that comes as the party prepares to gather for its annual general meeting. And joining us now, John Roggeveen, leader of the Alberta Liberal Party. Mr. Roggeveen, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now, before we get to developments with your party, let's maybe touch first on Elections Alberta signaling today that it's looking into allegations of inappropriate use and or distribution of the list of electors, those stating there has been no breach of its databases or systems. As leader of a registered party, what concerns you about this?
Well, obviously, accountability is important. I mean, people's privacy has been breached, it sounds like. We don't know who got the information. We don't know where it's going to be distributed. It can, there's all sorts of problems that can happen, and not just relating to elections, relating to all sorts of things. So, the sooner we can get to the bottom of this and deal with this issue and have it investigated, the better we will all be, frankly.
Okay, so let's go then to your party. And we'll start on aligning with Stephen Carter on the Just Vote No campaign. Marriage of convenience, necessity. How would you best describe the partnership?
Well, it is a partnership, really, and it's something that we thought that we could do as a party because we have the same objectives as Mr. Carter and his group. So we saw that could work towards really dealing with the issue in a more constructive and beneficial way for everybody.
So when you say issue, you mean the referendum in general? Do you mean the issue of separation?
Well, actually, all those issues. I mean, we're specifically the separation issue, but I mean, all the other referendum issues as well. I think that we probably see eye to eye on those as well. And so consequently, it seemed like it was a reasonable thing to do.
Okay, as a partnership, to what degree do you see this being a takeover of the Liberal Party? Should Albertans expect a name change might be in the offing?
I don't see it as a takeover at the moment. I guess where every party is vulnerable to that. I mean, the UCP seems to have been taken over by Take Back Alberta not too long ago. So we're all possibly exposed to a possible takeover. As far as a name change is concerned, I don't think it's in the offing. I think Mr. Carter himself is a bit less specific on whether he would like to see a name change, but I don't know what we would change our name to that would improve our electoral chances. So I don't think that's a good idea. And frankly, I think it would be kind of dishonest to change our name to something that we're not. People always say they want honest politicians. Well, how can you be honest if you're trying to present yourself as something other than what you are? And we're Liberals, so we run under that name.
Okay, so what will be then the focus of conversation at your annual convention this weekend? What are party members, and I assume those associated with Stephen Carter's group, set to discuss and maybe decide? Well,
I mean, the AGM is going to be largely focused on electing a new executive. We need to do that and rejuvenate. That's part of the rejuvenating the party. So we'll start there. We will also have to discuss issues like change of name. We've discussed those many times before, and we've never determined that it's a good idea. But these things are always open to discussion. So I just don't see that it's a good idea personally. Others will possibly disagree. That happens. We have good discussions. We're always open to talking about those sorts of things.
All right. Now, we've spoken many times in the past. You've been leader since, I want to say 2021. But
Yes.
Okay, but you've also, I understand, submitted intentions to leave that role. Why is now the time to maybe pass the torch?
Well, I mean, it may be a little bit past the time to pass the torch. I maybe should have done this a little bit earlier, but I was never elected as the leader. I was appointed by the board as an interim leader, and then we ran a leadership contest, and nobody decided that they wanted to run to be the leader. So I then became the quote unquote permanent leader. But in politics, nothing's permanent. And I think, frankly, it's important that our party, elect somebody democratically. I didn't expect to be here 5 years later, but here I am. Having said that, it's always a good idea to look at whether we don't want to rejuvenate the party, and part of rejuvenating the party sometimes means replacing the leader with a new leader.
And how much of a lineup might there be to be your successor?
Well, there's been a number of people that have inquired. I don't know how many of them will end up running if that's what the party decides to do. I would recommend the party have a leadership contest again, but I'm only one vote. I think I have some degree of influence, but I'm not the decider in terms of how it gets dealt with. So it's possible the party could decide, or the executive that's elected on Saturday could decide on Sunday that they want to replace me with a new interim leader, and that could happen. And if that's the case, then we'll have a new interim leader, and then move to hopefully to a leadership contest.
Let me ask you this: after years of being the party, being in the shadows, and the next general election 18 months away, what will it take for your party to once again generate traction with Alberta voters?
Well, I think we're already generating some traction. I mean, some of that might be a bit of a bump up from the federal Liberals doing better under Mark Carney, but we've seen our party has started growing since late last year. So there's a lot more interest and enthusiasm in our party. We also see that the opposition party, the NDP, is floundering. So I think people are looking around and saying, who can we get that's can basically unseat the government, or at least get us to a position where we have some control over the government. When the government has a majority, there's really no controls over it until the next election. So I think people are concerned about a lot of the things that the current UCP government is doing, and so we think that that's part of what's causing people to have more enthusiasm for our party. We're obviously a bit disillusioned and demoralized after the last couple of elections, but you got to start somewhere and work your way up.
Okay, so with that in mind, and maybe as a quick final question, how much then of a turning point do you see this AGM being where the future of the party is concerned?
Oh, I think it could potentially be a big turning point. I think when we get a new executive and we have people that are enthusiastic about proceeding, it'll definitely help. We have had our challenges for sure in the last 5 years, but I think that if we get a new executive, potentially new leadership, then we will have an opportunity to not only fight the referendums, but also get ready for the next election. It might come sooner than people think, and we're not supposed to have one until October of next year, but that's, elections have been called early before, and we should get ready for that, this summer, so that by fall, when the election could be called, we'll be ready to go.
All right. We'll have to leave it there for time. Appreciate your time this evening, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Take care.
John Roggeveen is leader of the Alberta Liberal Party. From concern over handling of voters' information to the Premier addressing the issue of separation at a notable international affairs think tank in the UK, and the road forward for Alberta Liberals. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, political analyst John Santos, and Graham Thompson is a longtime political columnist in the province. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with Elections Alberta issuing a warning today about the list of electors. The agency stated it's working to determine if there has been the inappropriate use and/or distribution of voter information, and if so, to protect and recover the information. Registered parties receive a list of those eligible to vote under rules set out in the Election Act, allowing for use to communicate with voters, but that information cannot be shared with anyone not given authorization in the legislation. Elections Alberta says it takes the matter seriously due to the extremely sensitive nature of the information, and further, that its databases and systems were not breached. John, maybe first and foremost, how concerning is this, and what could this information be potentially used for?
This is very concerning, right? Like, this list has people's addresses, their phone numbers. Like, it could be used for marketing purposes. It could be used for, harassment and intimidation, right? Like, this is very sensitive information that's only supposed to be handed to political parties for use as over the purposes of conducting an election campaign. And the Elections Authority adds a bunch of decoy records to it, so people that don't actually exist. And the particular composition and pattern of these decoy records, also known as SALT, if you think about chemistry class, right? Like, chemical reactions produce a traceable salt that you can use to figure out what the reaction is. And this salt inside each of the lists that's provided to a political party is unique. And so by looking at what the SALT record is within any particular list that gets leaked inappropriately or used inappropriately, then Elections Alberta is able to determine the source of the list. The source. And it is going to take some more investigation to figure out, which particular individual or individuals actually did that. But they can identify the original or legitimate organization to which that list was provided based on the salted records.
So, Graham, this is obviously a developing situation, and there has been no confirmation of who all might be involved here. But how does a development like this play with the deadline, just a couple days away, for separatist petition proponents to conclude their collection of signatures?
I don't know if it's going to make a big difference to that, because they're collecting them, and as John said, it's before the courts, and they did mention a political party that seems to have been the one leaking it to the separatists. But the thing is, I'm sounding a bit naive on this point, because I thought there were more stringent checks and balances on this, because yes, political parties can get access to this list, of course, for elections. Reaching out to people, they legitimately have a right to see the electors list. And then the question becomes, they're supposed to be, why aren't they holding on to, why are some of them, it seems, giving this to third parties, which is against the law? And I guess I assumed, and I am sounding amazingly naive right now for someone who's been around politics for decades, to think that political parties wouldn't follow the rules, that they would somehow game the system for them and their friends, and people who aren't supposed to see that electors list are getting actually a copy of it. And we've seen now it's gone public. This particular group, this third party, has put this list out publicly. That's what's actually set off the alarm bells, and people are shocked right now. I'm surprised, but maybe I shouldn't be surprised, because you got to think this has gone on before, but no one's actually made the list public, so we haven't actually seen this kind of maybe underhanded or nefarious move on the part of individuals who should not be having control of that list.
Okay, so John, and one quick last question on this, but with that in mind, Elections Alberta obviously signaling that it takes a leak of such information seriously, but how do you weigh the likelihood of anything coming of this?
Yeah, I don't see anything happening. I mean, maybe the party, or if they're able to determine the actual individual who leaked the list, will get some fines, but that's about it. And I mean, if Graham's admitting to naivete, I will admit to cynicism. This kind of thing happens all the time. You hear stories from people who, maybe they took an election sign one year, or they donated money, and then suddenly some other advocacy organization that is not that political party and with whom that person has never had contact is suddenly sending them emails, right? So there's always sort of the improper use of lists, and nothing is ever done to really put the systems in place needed to clamp down on it. And I mean, to be a bit cynical, I think there's a bit of an omerta between political parties and political actors, because they all sort of benefit from like how loosely kept this stuff is. And really, I'm not surprised this happened. I'm surprised that they were caught. And the only reason they were caught wasn't because they did something wrong, but because they slipped up in doing it, right? And I think this points to the desperation of the separatist camp, that they hastily put together this app. They hastily put together or uploaded the list to this app so that everybody and their dog who's a separatist could contact other people and sign them up. So yeah, it was the haste of how they did this. I think that's why they were caught. And this honestly probably happens more than we would like to know that it or ideally nothing, this would never happen, right? But this is probably more prevalent than it actually is coming to the surface.
Okay, we're almost out of time. I want to squeeze this next one in. The Premier, currently in the UK, taking part in a fireside conversation today at Chatham House. That's a British think tank based in London. And of the questions she was asked, the last was about what the moderator called a likely referendum on separation in the fall, and proponents cultivating relationships south of the border and with the Trump administration. Here's some of Daniel Smith's response.
I think my job is to demonstrate that Canada can work, to identify in a real way the issues that are causing tension, and then to find ways to work through them. And I think that the Prime Minister has the same spirit.
The Chatham House conversation touched on a number of talks, including efforts on pipeline development, Alberta's stake in CUSMA trade talks, and the provincial government's own efforts in advocating for international trade. Graham, surprised the issue of separation would hit the radar during a discussion at what's known as the Royal Institute of International Affairs.
Not at all, because it's the big deal, of course. The people watching from outside are going, oh my goodness, will Alberta separate? Of course, you see the polls, most Albertans are against separation. It's not a simple thing as voting for separation, and the next day we're a separate country. No, it's a very long, involved process. But yeah, this is something people are talking about. And it's interesting how Smith, to me, downplayed the threat of separation, at least the petition and the referendum coming, we expect this fall. And she was saying, look, this is like a family squabble. We're working our way through it. When in fact, you see how she's coddling the separatists, making it easier for them to have their referendum. And she's talking about, look, this problem is 10 years of the Liberal government, meaning, of course, Trudeau. As she said, they're trying to keep our oil in the ground. It told us no more oil out of the ground, when in fact, you got the Trudeau Liberals, of course, bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline, was spent $34 billion on that pipeline to get more oil out of Alberta. So there's always this idea that Trudeau's fault for everything, and she's downplaying the separatist, feeling among her supporters when she's talking to an international group, whereas back home, I see her as coddling those same separatists.
All right, John, we need to go to the commercial break, but I want to hear from you quickly. What do you take away from the Premier's response?
It's entirely predictable, but she's at an advantage, right? Like if she gets the pipeline, she can claim victory that she bent the federal government to her will. And if she doesn't get the pipeline, she can say, I did my best and elect me to keep, fighting Ottawa. So either way, she's going to come out on top, narratively speaking.
All right. Time for us to take a quick break. But when we come back, tracking a road forward for the Alberta Liberal Party. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. We heard from Alberta Liberal leader John Roggeveen off the top as the party prepares for its annual general meeting, a convention where there will likely be a whole lot of focus on the Liberals partnering with political strategist Stephen Carter on a campaign railing against the Smith government's plans for an October referendum. John, what kind of crossroads do you see the Alberta Liberal Party entering at the moment?
It's tough, right? Like, they've been shut out for a long time, but this could be the thing that they need to build some energy, because, Carter talks about the advantages when it comes to fundraising, but another advantage is that parties can use the electors list legitimately. And so working on this campaign is a way for the Liberals to potentially identify more supporters and donors.
Graham, the alliance with this outside group, led by the man we see right there, Stephen Carter, what's the likelihood that could lead to a takeover of the Liberal Party, or at the very least, setting it on a whole new direction?
Yeah, we're talking here about Stephen Carter. And Stephen Carter, of course, is well known in political circles. He's very aggressive. And so people are thinking, is this a reverse takeover? It's interesting. You're talking to Mr. Roggeveen. He said, I'm quoting here, "I don't see it as a takeover at the moment." So you never know with Stephen Carter what's going to happen next. And so the idea here in Alberta politics is a sense that there's still a vacuum in the middle somewhere. The UCP is doing well. The NDP is not doing that well at all. They're dropping. And of course, John's the expert on the polling. But it does create this idea that there's still maybe room in the middle of Alberta politics, perhaps, to have another party come up, and you've got to wonder if Stephen Carter is thinking about maybe using the Liberals as a vehicle, because this is someone who doesn't think small. He'll be thinking like 5 moves in a chess game, and I just wonder what he has up his sleeve for the future of the Liberal Party.
So John, the next general election, a year and a half away, we believe. What do you see it taking for the Liberals to reemerge then from the shadows in that relatively short amount of time?
I think they need to do all of the fundamentals that parties need to do. They need to identify members, build their donor base, get organized. But it's going to be a tough road ahead. Like, the bump that they're getting right now is in popularity and exposure is really mostly because of the success of the federal Liberals and, of course, their separate entities. So in order for them to succeed, it would mean that the Liberals or the NDP would have to continue to flounder, that the Progressive Tory doesn't go anywhere, and the Liberals do everything that they need to do and have failed to do over the last few years. So I think that's a very tall order.
All right, Graham, I think maybe we have 30 seconds left. So what kind of pressure then rests on the shoulders of Liberal Party members who are turning out for this weekend's convention? Is this a turning point?
Well, how many are going to turn out? The last convention had 100 people. It's not exactly a vibrant force, and it's in a sense could be an easy takeover target. But I, would be watching it, but not that closely. The Liberal support tends to be a rounding error now when it comes to Alberta politics.
All right, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you for this.
It's been my pleasure.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about the Alberta government doing a test drive of 120 kilometers an hour as a speed limit on a stretch of Highway 2 south of Edmonton. John's clearly a fan, evident by his yee-haw yippee. Chris responds that it's crazy. Now everyone will do 140 kilometers an hour. Donald tells us drivers are already doing 130, just made their speeding ticket a little less if they're caught doing 140. Irie is taking the practical approach given the price of fuel, saying they'll stick to 110 to maximize fuel efficiency as 120 burns too much gas. And Ameta advises we drive on the 401 in southern Ontario for a day, and 140 will seem slow. have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, from the spring fiscal statement to the 10-year anniversary of the Fort McMurray wildfire, we'll hear from Alberta MP and Cabinet Minister Eleanor Olszewski. That's Friday at 11. And a note before we leave you, we are preempted at 6 tomorrow night because of Toronto Raptors playoff basketball. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.